Good morning, Cornerstone Church.
Buenos días, Cornerstone.
My name is Dave Pulzetti,
Mi nombre es David Pulzetti.
and this is my wife, Kay Spofford.
Y eso es mi esposo, Kay Spofford. That's it, I won't drink from it.
So you probably heard me say this before, but you should never ask a pastor or a missionary to say just a few words. And usually I keep to myself, but when it comes talking about trips to Central America, I could talk all day, so I'll try to keep it brief. We want to thank you for being such a integral part of this. To look out here, you think this is a small body of people, but we also included West Congregational Church in this mission trip, and actually it turns out that more people came from Cornerstone than did from West Church, that has about 450 members. So it's just a blessing to see the commitment that you have to this. So to give you a recap, we brought 14 people to Central America to work in Honduras among indigenous people called the Lenca. They live, even though Honduras is in Central America, it's very hot. The Lenca live at an elevation of about 5,000 feet, and the weather there is beautiful. In fact, it's kind of like today. During our break, I was looking outside, and there's a beautiful pine tree outside the door, and where we were there were palm trees and papaya trees, but there were also pine trees, just like here, and it smelled like here. You could smell the pine. God gave us a beautiful place to be, and the people there are beautiful. We work with a group called Missions Door, and Pastor Eric Sanchez is a Honduran who works with Missions Door, and he started a group called Misiones Lenca, which is Lenca's Missions. They are church planters. They've planted some close to 40 churches among some very, very small villages, people who don't have a lot of resources, but they have a spirit and a love for the Lord that just, when we go, we pretend that we're going to go help the people there. And it's just such a moving thing to see how much they give us. People you wouldn't think have a lot of resources, but enrich in our lives so much. And it's such an honor and a blessing to be a part of that. So as a church planter, Pastor Eric sees a need to be able to teach the pastors, because a lot of pastors are just poor people who just can barely read, and I've seen this actually firsthand, where somebody will just tear a few pages out of a Bible and say, okay, go preach. And they don't have a lot of resources, and the pastor realizes that with the mission growing and with more and more churches being planted, that they need to be able to teach the pastors and have an ongoing program where pastors can go to a place that doesn't cost them any money, and they can learn, and they can have seminars and trainings. And so he's started a training center where there'll be training for pastors, there'll be retreat centers, and there'll be also industrial arts training for carpentry and weaving and welding, where people can take their skills and go out and make some money and help pay for this ministry. So it's a very big, broad plan, but it's necessary to be able to have all the pastors on the same page and preach the word of the Lord the way it should be preached. We were asked to go and help with this. This intrepid group of 14 people, just came together in a way that it's hard to predict. We've seen some friendships, we've seen some relationships grow, and we've seen people whose eyes were opened and have become very excited about just serving the Lord in many different ways. And so, as having been chosen as leaders, it's just wonderful to see. We've led other groups, and I've had the privilege of leading a number of groups, and each group is like a child to me. You love them all, they're all different, they all have their own personality, and this was another special group. And hopefully some of the people are staying together, have relationships, and it's wonderful to see how the Lord works. We go far away to serve the Lord in these foreign countries, but you can see how we're serving the Lord right here in our own backyard, in our own families, and that's so important. We talk about missionaries going away to faraway places, but we need to be missionaries right in our own, right in our own homes, in our communities. So, what we did on the trip was the physical things we did was we helped to build a building that's going to be part of the training center. It's going to be a meeting hall, and so our job was to level a floor that was just a lot of mud and piles, and we had to move a lot of mud and clay, and everybody pitched in to do that. It was great to see that. We also helped them. They built the walls out of concrete blocks, so we mixed some mortar and we moved a lot of block
Scored the block.
and help cut the block so and then one of our members who likes to work in wood more than in concrete found himself leading a group building church pews out of wood that hold like 4 or 5 people, and one of the pastors there, who's a woodworker, had gotten these pews, all the parts ready, all the pieces cut and fit, but they needed to be assembled. So Dave Lowe was chosen as the leader of that, and Dave was in his own element working with wood. So it was good to see God bless us that way. You know, Dave kind of felt out of like a fish out of water mixing concrete, even though he was doing it willingly. But then God kind of rewarded him by giving him this Geppetto's workshop where he was in his element. So God works in so many ways, and so I think I need to cut this short. But Kay may want to say something, and then we have a gift for the church. So
I just wanted to say that one of the things that you always worry about in groups is, kind of cliques can kind of start sometimes, especially when you have a couple of different churches, and that did not happen with our group. It was something that even the local people noticed, that our group was really getting along well and supportive of each other, and I really appreciated a lot of the members of the group chipping in and helping the women who were preparing food, and it was just a really wonderful sight to see, and it was a blessing.
And so I mentioned that they live among pine trees, and there's a lot of pine needles, and they have the Lenca people do a lot of artistry work. They make some pottery that's rustic but very beautiful, Lenca pottery. And they also do things with pine needles. They found that all these pine needles can become useful, and they do weaving. In fact, there's a program up right in the village where we were that teaches people how to do pine artistry. And so one day, one of the men whose name I did not get, and his daughter presented us with something, and would like to pass that on. Dave, I'd like you to come up if you don't mind.
Sure.
The man and his daughter, is actually the daughter's idea. I think she was probably 8 or 9 years old, and she said, "Why don't we have our mom make this this thing and give it to the North Americans?" And so they presented us with this bowl, and as the man said, they wanted us to give it to our church to use as a collection plate.
Oh.
And so this was handmade by a woman, and we hope that Cornerstone will honor that. It's made out of pine needles, and maybe you all can come up and look at it.
It's beautiful.
And,
This is beautiful.
It was handmade, so we just we hope this blesses the church. So.
Great.
So,
well, thank you,
yeah.
Dave. On behalf of them, share the hugs here. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Actually, you want to pass that around? You can hand that to Ed. He's love to see it.
Yeah, fill it up.
Yeah, fill it up.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, and Derek, you ready? And Joan wasn't able to make it, but yet she's going to speak for herself.
Hi, my name is Joan. I'm from Cornerstone Church in Plastown, New Hampshire, and I went to Honduras. When I first heard about this trip, I just felt compelled and interested, and I knew that there was something about it that I had to do it. And I pray every day to that I can live in the center of God's will. And I don't always succeed, but in this I felt that He wanted me to do this. And so I went ahead, and I had some reservations about different things that had nothing to do with the country or the people, for which I was just looking forward to, but just other things, technical things to do with the trip itself. But that did not stop me, and I went forward, and I just really wanted to see the country. I wanted to meet the people, and I wanted to help, and because I like to help. I am a helper. I really, really enjoyed working with the people there. There was a language barrier, but I overcame it a little bit. If I ever went again, I would definitely want to learn a little more Spanish, but because it did make it a little difficult. But when I was working on the actual sites, like I would work in the kitchen helping to prepare lunch. I didn't do that every day, but I did do it, and I also at times worked on the building. If I needed to know something very specific, I would put it into my phone app, and like 1 word or 2 words, and then they would know what I needed. Yeah, so I really enjoyed working with the people, next to the people. Even if we weren't having large conversations, I liked it. I liked doing the work, and I liked learning like new things, like how to tie rebar and straighten out rebar, and I didn't do a lot of lifting because I didn't want to hurt my back, but I also, put cement in between blocks, just things that I had never done before that was kind of fun. I enjoyed every part of it, and I especially enjoyed walking around taking pictures. I didn't do a lot with Vacation Bible School, but take pictures. A lot of people were involved, a lot of us. I enjoyed that whole week of work, even when people were just kind of sitting, socializing more, because I usually have my threshold of I need to take a break from that. I'd go back to work. I enjoyed the bus rides, going out into the country, and even in inner city. I put the phone or my camera on like movie, and I just like take movies of everything that was coming by, and everything fascinated me about the country. There was just so many different things. I enjoyed having church in the building that was being built, like right outside, and on benches that everybody had just built. And that was great. That was great. And we had an interpreter for that too, and so we could understand the message that he was saying. And we sang, they sang. It was good. And then on one of the last days in La Esperanza, we went even further up into the mountain. We ended up having to walk a little bit because the bus couldn't even get up the hill. It was like being off-road. And we saw 8 baptisms in a river, which was really, really great. I went through the interpreter at the end of our working time and thanked all the workers in the kitchen, the women, for all the wonderful meals that they cooked. They just cooked some awesome food. I also had an interpreter thank the bus driver because he was like the best driver ever. It's really challenging to drive around there. I don't think they have a lot of rules. And the day that he pulled over in the middle of town, just in the middle of the street, with his phone in his ear, and got out of the bus to help an old lady cross the street, I was like, wow, this guy has my vote. He's not only a good driver, he's a good person. So, and all the meetings that us as a group we had together, and just getting together and doing this whole thing was great too. Getting to know people better that I already know, but don't get to spend a lot of time with. So that was good too. I think God just opened up something for me. Like I am in this little orb, my own little orb, and it's not huge. And he just showed me that it's bigger, that our church, our family, this family of God is huge, and that he is doing wonderful things everywhere. and not just in our town or our church or in our lives, but in other countries too. And I felt like I was this tiny little piece, a really small piece of this puzzle. And I hope that it was a blessing, and I think it was a blessing just for somebody whose path I may have crossed. But it was a huge, huge blessing for me. You know, and I didn't go expecting to get a huge blessing. I had a feeling I would be blessed, because just thinking of the experience in the abstract, not knowing the details, God, everything God does is big, and it's a blessing, and I mean, it's as big as I can allow it to be big, but I allowed it to be big in my heart. I may not always show it on the outside, but you know, I do experience things internally, since I'm not emotive as some people I know. I would encourage everybody to have the experience of going on a mission trip. You know, I think they should give courses on raising money, but you know, other than that, you know, part of it with the technical part, the trip itself is just, you know, it's exciting. It's just changes you, because you just experience something different and something bigger than yourself. And I just recommend it, especially for, well, older or younger. And my roommate on the trip was 78, and she could lift more dirt than I could, you know. So you don't have to be young to go on it, but all ages, yeah. As a whole church.
Yeah.
Stop raising funds, we'll all go together.
Okay, who is next and would like to share that went on the trip? Dan, why don't you, Dan and Lisa, why don't you guys start?
I asked Lisa to come up just because I wanted her to share, because it's a privilege for me to see her eyes get bright. And when she starts talking about the people, like Paola and whatnot, her eyes just light up.
You made me cry because I missed them.
So why don't you share
Do you have
about...
any of the pictures? I wasn't sure.
Derek, you get some pictures?
So, I made Dan go on this trip. He did not want to go. I was supposed to take him to California as a graduation present. And I said, hey, wouldn't it be great to go to Honduras instead of California? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah.
Wouldn't it be great to go to Honduras instead of California? And he was like, are you crazy? I was like, no, but I really, really want to go. And he wouldn't, you can't hear me?
Oh, all right. It's hard.
Shut the things off, Jay.
Anyway, it's hard.
Sorry. So I made him go. Happy graduation. It was my trip, not yours. So I had no expectations on this trip. I've never been to Central America. I didn't know you can't flush toilet paper in the entire country. That was news. I wasn't really sure I was supposed to do that, but I learned very quickly. You just put it in the basket. It's okay. It's okay. It was a little bit of a shock when we went. It was so hot when we arrived. I wasn't expecting it to be that hot, because I was looking forward to 70-degree weather up in the mountains. And when we finally reached that, I got it. Okay, this is good. But one thing that amazed me the most was the ladies. These people, they were amazing. Picture camping. I don't know if you can see. Picture camping and cooking a meal for 40, maybe 50 people, using open flame and fire. And we're not talking like, here's a bunch of sandwiches and some soup I made for you. We're talking, right now, novia, there's 3 novias. We have novio uno, dos, and tres. Novia was cooking homemade fried chicken. I worked at Chicken Connection for 2 years. She kicked their butt, absolutely, hands down. The food was amazing. This is Esmeralda and Nubia 3, and they're making fried fish. I did see some heads on the fish, but I think they cut them off for us, which was great. They would go to market in the morning, they would bring fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and we would sit there and I would help. I mean, yes, I can shovel dirt, but I wanted to be where they were because they were amazing people. And we would just cut vegetables and everything was made from scratch. And they were so careful because, yes, we had a water issue. So we had certain drums where we had to take the water from there and wash the vegetables, and they would put bleach in it just to make sure that all of the parasites were killed. I can honestly say I don't think any of us got sick from their food or their water. They were so particular in the way they prepared everything. You can keep going. I have just some miscellaneous pictures. There should be more, yeah. Here we are sitting literally on a mountainside doing a church service. I've never done church outside like that. I think the only time I've ever really done church is back in the day when we used to do Smith Freeman weekend. We would have church in your backyard, Melissa. This was a little bit different. We had to walk probably a mile. It was about 95 degrees out. I was wearing sandals and a dress.
Because the day before we had given away everything.
Right, we'd given all of our clothes away. So I was down to one pair of shoes. I'd given away my sneakers, given away my other shoes or whatever. Given away all my work clothes. All of us did. We probably had 7-10 bags of shoes and clothes that we donated because these people rely on everything and they're thankful for every little thing that they get. So you just give what you can. So I'm in a dress and I'm walking this mile up this mountain. Rocks, water, mush, and there we are they're doing a church service, and that's Paola. She was our translator, and I was so thankful for her because I wanted to tell those ladies how important they were to me. They were such a blessing, I miss them very much. And I couldn't express it to them, so she did it for me. If I wasn't talking to the children, some of the children knew English really well because I went to bilingual school. They could tell the parents how much I loved them too. And we see the baptisms going on. That's Pastor Jorge. We spent a lot of time with Pastor Jorge because Pastor Eric had to go back to the States for a conference. So he was around a lot, he and his family. And they did like 7 or 8. I would never walk into that water, but these people were like literally getting baptized in this water. And there we are working. When we first arrived, there were only a couple of rows of blocks. So much work happened that week. It's hard to see because that building is enormous, and there the churches are so small, but this building is huge, and it took a lot of work. And you can see all that red dirt in the back. That red dirt was everywhere, and it was like hard clay. Jason and Logan were like man horses. They were amazing. We could not have done it and Gabe, oh my gosh, Gabe. We could not have done it without those young boys. They were so strong. And they were bringing those wheelbarrows all over the place with that dirt. This was the last day of VBS, all of the children. So the first day we probably had maybe 30, 40. The next day, double that, 60. The next day is probably 90. By the end, we probably had about 120. It was a Saturday, they didn't have school. And these children came from everywhere. We had a little bus, so we fit on the bus. How many people did you say would fit on that bus?
We're probably like 20, maybe max.
But they would fit like 40, 50 children in that. They would go around the town and pick them all up, and then they would just come piling out, because they all wanted to be at VBS. And they're getting their toothbrushes and toothpaste that was donated by a local dentist in Haverhill. Where? In Bradford. Some of these children have never seen a toothbrush. Paola is 28 years old. She got a toothbrush when she was 16. She had a really, really bad infection while she was doing translating that week. She had to go to the store, she had to take her money and buy antibiotics because she had such a bad abscess. But she talked the entire time, and she explained to me my mother couldn't afford toothpaste, so we didn't have toothbrushes when we were growing up. And the only reason why she got one is because she ended up moving on to the bilingual school and getting a scholarship from somebody that gave her money in order to go to school, get clothing, get supplies, and learn English. And that's how she got a toothbrush. And that's my story. So we were presented with a gift when we left for Cornerstone. Can't really tell you what this says. It's from the Lincoln Missions. They're recognizing Cornerstone Church of Plastow, Nueva Hampshire, that would be New Hampshire, for helping the expansion and evangelism of Christ through the Lencas. Muchas gracias. Yamarangila is where we were located, and we were there the 11th of August. That's about as good as I can get as far as translation. Not bad, right? And they wrapped it. This is very typical. You see a lot of like the bright colors. Some ladies wear around their head. They put them on their tables. They use them as blankets, and it was wrapped in this. So I thought it would be nice if we could put this maybe on the offering table, just as a reminder, because it's bright and it's pretty.
It's crooked, just like us.
And it's crooked.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, right there.
So it was a great experience.
You have the plate?
Good.
Here.
Oh. It was a great experience. It was a little rough. My husband got sick very quickly. He's almost back to normal. I was blessed.
As normal as I am.
I got very, very sick the day we left. And I was so sick I wasn't even sure if I could get on a bus, let alone an airplane. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have to stay here. What if I have to go to a hospital? What am I gonna do? My pains were so bad, it was like giving birth. It was that bad. But I just kept breathing and breathing and breathing, and eventually it passed, and I got better that day. I don't know how I got better that day. I was like, how am I ever gonna get on this airplane? But I did. And then by the time I got home, I was fine. I was completely fine. It was like a one day. Poor Dan, poor other people, not necessarily as blessed as I was. Still dealing with some of that. And that's hard. I want to go back, but I'm nervous because, oh my gosh, what if I get sick again? But the blessings definitely outweigh
Yeah, so
the risks.
as she said, I was blessed by going in spite of the fact I didn't want to go. For me, I'm a people person. It's all about the people. And the language barrier was pretty significant, but you could see the Spirit of God in them, in the way that they cared for us, in the way that they provided for us. People are very resourceful. You can ask Dave, like the bus, the mountains that they were driving this bus up, like I would question whether I want to take my truck on it. And they're just driving on it like it's normal everyday things. And like we got to the top of the mountain. I don't know how we got to the top of the mountain, but there was a point where the bus couldn't go any further. So the bus ended up getting stuck, and the pumpkin of the rear end was sitting right on a rock. And it's like, okay, this is a 10,000-pound bus. Like, what are you gonna do? Well, the driver of the bus, what was his name? Lennon steals the jack out of this little pickup that was with us. Now, the pickup's maybe 3,500 pounds, like the jack's made for the pickup. And these guys trust in the sovereignty of God. I'm just telling you that right now. Like, he put that jack underneath the bus, and it picked up the bus, and Dave was with him the whole time, and he's like, there's this big rock, and he's just like chipping at the rock, taking the rock out, and takes the rock out, and the bus is unstuck. And it was just like everyday thing. Like, this is what they do. They're just very resourceful. They do extremely a lot of things with little stuff. And it's really a blessing to see. There's so many, I haven't come up here in a while, and I always feel the need to share how you see God working in different things. And it's this trip was a venue. You know, it was a destination point. It was a thing to do. But it caused us to get together, and it caused us to have relationship with one another. You know, and it's funny because when you put a bunch of people in a small, tight space, you know, our tendency is to rub elbows a little bit. You know, that's always the initial response, right? And as time went by, you see the Spirit of God in each and every one of us. And you allow yourself to look past the ruffles, and you see the heart of people. And our group, like you said, our group was awesome and amazing, and I hope I'm very thankful for the relationships that we built in our group. You know, it was this week, through other experiences, that God really gave me an illustration for this. And a few of us guys are reading devotional, and the devotional was quick to point out, like, how often do you really feel close to God when you're comfortable? And I was thinking about it in the context of my nursing career, and this application applies to this trip specifically, but like in my nursing career, I chose the path of least resistance, or at least what I appeared to be the path of least resistance, because it was less uncomfortable. And much to my dismay, it's still very uncomfortable. And I feel myself calling out to the Lord repeatedly, time and time and time again, because I'm uncomfortable and I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I need God's help. And this mission trip is a specific thing to that, because it was very uncomfortable, and it's something that we didn't really want. But when we're uncomfortable and we're like, we don't know what's going to happen, that's when we cling to the Lord the most. And I was just thinking, like, as Christians, we want to be close to the Lord, but we also want to be comfortable. And I don't think those things line up. You know, so in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, if I want to be close to the Lord, I want to be more purposeful about putting myself in uncomfortable situations. But that goes against everything that I feel. And I'm challenged this week, and I'm not challenging you guys because I'm just putting this on myself. But like, what am I so afraid of if God has my back? You know, like, why am I so afraid to like put myself in those uncomfortable situations? Because it's, you know, it's a little bit painful. You don't know how it's going to work out, but God does. It's just like, I want to be close to the Lord, but I want to be comfortable. So what do I want more? If God is going to ultimately fulfill me and care for me and make me feel complete, isn't that much more than comfort? Comfort is lazy, it's easy. Being close to the Lord is hard, and that's what it's supposed to be. And this trip was a great reflection of that. You know, when I was telling someone earlier, like, Thursday we got back to the Sunday, I think I counted 25 times that I went to the bathroom. That was uncomfortable. Just throwing that out there. I wasn't really praising the Lord during that time. But in hindsight, I'm thankful for it. You know, because it causes me to get to my knees, it causes me to be humbled, it causes me to get off my high horse, you know, because I got it all figured out. Do you know that? Don't you guys know that? Don't you get it all figured out?
Absolutely.
So that's how the trip helped me, you know, and I'm sure the Lord is still going to reveal things to us as we go on. And you know, those little tidbits that you're not paying attention to over here, and he just kind of brings it up. It's like, oh! Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. That was really cool. I see how your hand worked there. But I'm looking forward to those days.
I have one more very funny story.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. So talk about language barrier. So I'm working in the kitchen and I'm peeling green bananas, and they are specifically green bananas, and they're very, very, very sticky. And we were doing a huge tub of them because they were going to use them in obviously our lunch. So I'm peeling these green bananas, I had this sticky stuff all over, and I was like, you know, I need to wash my hands. So I said, you know, to Paola, I'm like, I need to wash my hands. She's like, yeah, come over here, and Yoami was there. Yoami, she's Pastor Eric's wife, yes, who I love. We go over to the hand washing station and she's pointing to the ground and I think she's telling me to pick up that rock. Because I don't have soap, I just have water. So I pick up the rock and I'm scrubbing my hands and Paola says to me, she goes, wow, she's like, that was really smart that you picked up the rock to get the sticky stuff off your hands. I go, no, your mommy told me to do that. She goes, no, she said your shoes are getting wet. We have a lot of good stories, but that one by far for me was my best. So that's it.
Thank you guys. Okay, who's next?
Wow.
Welcome. My name's Dave.
My name's Dave.
Come on, Dave.
Just wanted to add a little bit. I'm Dave. And, back in February, Dave Pulsetti came to me and said, gee, want to go to Honduras in August? And I said, yeah. Honduras is hot, there's bugs. I don't really want to go. But he said, oh, no, trust me, we're going to be up in the mountains. It's going to be beautiful. And I said, okay, now I'm going to find out whether Dave's a used car salesman or not. So I said, I've always wanted to go on a mission trip, my first one. And I've been involved in mission committees and, I know how some of the things go, but I just felt like I just retired, so it was like I got time. So I signed up for it. But appreciate your financial support and your prayer support. It was good knowing that there were churches praying for us that 10 days we were there, and really felt it. So this Lenca mission is really worthy of support. It isn't a case of Americans are going down and helping these people out, and then when the Americans leave, they don't know what to do. These are local pastors who are trying to save their own people. They're trying to do church building. They're trying to do, as Dave was saying, industrial arts, welding, teaching them a trade. These mountain people. Their churches are small. As Dave said, there's probably 40 churches around, but they're 20, 30 people because they don't have any transportation. They can't go anywhere, so they walk everywhere. But this is the local people trying to help themselves and help their own people. So it's really worthy of support going on. I don't see it stopping for our churches to stop supporting this, whether it's financially, prayer, or if you're looking for the next mission trip. I know they're going to keep going down, and all we're doing is going down and helping them. They have their vision, they have their direction, they know what they're doing. We're just going down and helping them put the buildings together, or digging holes, or whatever we do. So if you've never been on a trip, this was just a great, for all the things you heard, it stretches you. You're definitely out of your comfort zone. But to see the people that were on our team all respond to that, they just stretched and stretched and stretched. And if you're looking for a trip to go on, say keep in touch with Dave, because they're going to be going down, more and more often, and it's a great opportunity. And it's a beautiful area. The temperature was comfortable. I didn't see a bug. Oh, we did. I have a picture of a caterpillar.
Yeah. Don't touch the cat.
That they said don't touch this caterpillar because it'll hurt your hand. But it just was a great overall time. So I just encourage you that this isn't the end. This is just the beginning, and I'd like to see this moving forward. So let's get more teams going and help these people help themselves. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, Logan, I'm looking at you. Logan, is Jason here? Is JJ here?
He had to work today.
Oh, he had to work. Okay, Logan, you want to come up, and maybe Gabe and Dan, you guys want to come up? There's strength in numbers. Go. Step up.
So, I've never been on a trip before like this. I've even left the country, so definitely, I wasn't looking forward to this, or not, and I was kind of like on the edge of whether I wanted to go or not, and very glad I did. It was definitely really worth the trip, worth the experience. I definitely would go on another one if I could. Yeah. Definitely a lot of crazy stories that I can remember for a long time. Yeah.
So this was also my first time leaving the country and my first missions trip. So it was a pretty cool experience. Ashley had been to this place twice before, so it was cool to just see where she'd been and what she'd been doing. So me and Logan ended up doing a lot of crazy things together, just like helping them build it and filling up huge water reservoirs, 2 gallons at a time from a puddle. That was fun.
That took a long time.
The best part of that story, I wasn't there, but they shared it with me. 2 of the locals, Hondurans, had co-opted them to come help them get water. And they drove them, they left the site where we all were, drove down to the site where the water was, got out of the truck, handed in the buckets, and then pointed around to the woods around them and said, "Jaguars." And then walked away. So they kept their composure though. that was great. So for me, it was just there's a lot. I didn't really prepare much, but Ashley's not here today, unfortunately, to share her experience. But as Gabe said, she's been there twice. This was her 3rd trip, and it was really great to see her interacting with the people that she'd been with before. Quite literally, not just that she'd been to Honduras, but she'd been to the Lenca people. And in fact, she knew Paola previously because she'd been there with Mercy International, which ran the school that Paola had gone to learn her English. So she had not only a connection with the people, but also very specifically some people there. So it was great to interact with them and just kind of get a feel for what she'd been through and just see her in her element. She truly is meant to be attached to this kind of a service. So that was great. I just want to also add on to something Joan said, not that she didn't do a good job, but when she described Lenine driving the bus, I want to just add a picture to your mind of what happened that day. Picture someone driving a bus through Plastow or Haverhill with 15 people that don't speak your language. He literally was on the phone talking with someone probably to prepare something for us. And as we weaved through this town, this city of bustling people, none of us saw it, but he saw this old lady who was bent over, could barely walk, had to cross a busy street and get up onto the sidewalk before she got hit. And he pulled the bus over, was out of the bus before we even knew what was going on, never dropped his phone call. He was literally talking on the phone the whole time. Helped her gently across the street and up onto the sidewalk. And this is the kind of people that we work with all week. Just every one of them is like this. And I'd like to, Dave Lowe mentioned that there's quite a mission going on there. He's absolutely right. They have a plan, they have a vision. God has definitely put something on their hearts. It's not just this building that they're building. They have a plan that's going on for years to bring something to that area that's going to change that whole country. So.
Okay, you're Alyssa, right? I saw it just because of name tag in a picture. And I forget your name. Megan. Did you guys want to come share?
Sure.
Come on up. Megan and Alyssa, everyone.
Josie, no, So hi guys. Like Dave mentioned, I'm Alyssa. This is Megan, and we actually work full time for Missions Door, the organization that we went with. So we both work on college campuses in like Central Mass. So we're actually from Worcester. So we drove up to be with you guys today because we really love this team, and you know, personally, this is the second trip that I've been on, and this team, we just got the chance before we went for like months to meet together and to laugh together and really bond, to go down with this like this really unique just sense of community that we went down with. So super grateful for that and for you guys. But I do just want to share one funny story. So you might have heard of Lisa. We have nicknames that are sort of Spanish. So Meg and I had really committed ourselves to Duolingo before we went on this trip, which will teach you Spanish, and didn't do a great job, but we tried, and we went down there and we were like, okay, we're gonna be bold, we're gonna actually try to learn some Spanish. So Rick Myers was our team lead, who he works for Missions Door as well, so he was kind of our coordinator for, you know, kind of like between Dave and Kay and the local people. Rick was kind of our middleman. So I went over to him, I was like, okay, Dave, how do you say bucket? And he said it to me, and I was like, okay, I got this. So we were mixing cement, and I needed a bucket to put like the mortar into to carry over to where I was working. So I went over to one of like the local guys, and I was like, I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I was like, do you, yeah. So I was like, ¿tú necesitas esta cubano? And what I asked him was, do you need this Cuban man? And so he started cracking up. And he was like, no, you can take it. So, and Rick, he said, he came up to me afterwards, he was like, I have never seen that man smile. Like, I've never seen him react like that. So that was really kind of this, like the rest of, it was like early in the week. I was Cubano for the rest of the entire week. But it was just like this experience of like, okay, like I'm gonna go super out of my comfort zone. And they don't expect us, like, I don't look like I'm a white American, you know, I don't look like I know any Spanish necessarily. So they're not surprised that you know, we mess up the language and we do all these things. I wanted lettuce, I asked for a turtle. Like, it was just, it wasn't perfect. But the language barrier was a huge thing for me initially. I was like, I'm gonna embarrass myself. I'm gonna say something like offensive or obscene, and I'm not gonna know. But they're just so gracious, and they're really awesome people down there. But figured I'd share a laugh. You wanna share yours?
Oh, yeah. So we did do Duolingo before we went, and we weren't like very, very, very strict about it. And so we knew words like ticket, and like we could do a restaurant scene really well. But that was it. We never got to the next bubble above that. So I was over like mixing cement with one of the guys, and he asked me, he was like, is it cuántos años?
Cuántos años.
Cuántos años? And which means like, how old are you? And I knew what it meant, but I forgot how to say 22 back. And so I was like, dos. I was like, do-si-do? And he was like, okay. I later found out it's Benti-dos, so Benti-dos. But yeah, it was really great when I first contacted Rick Myers, because we're co-workers at Missions Door. And I was like, hey, I work on the campus section, so I'm a missionary full-time on college campuses, you know, making sure students have the opportunity to hear the gospel and have the opportunity to make that choice while they're in college. And I was like, but you know what, like there is just this thing that happens when you start to serve people cross-culturally. Like, there is just this part of the diamond that is God's heart, that when you start to experience the global church, it just changes you forever, as you've heard, like, from all of our team. And so I was like, I need to go on these trips because I want to be trained to take students on these trips, because there's an unlocked missions force on college campuses, and if we can get these college students interested in being missionaries,
then, we could really see the gospel spread. And so Rick was like, okay, no problem. I have a trip going out from Haverhill. It's kind of near you guys. It's about like an hour and a half away from you guys, and you can go with them. So I showed up at West Church, and I also brought Alyssa with me. She's my ministry partner, so we do a lot together. But anyway, so we showed up to West Church, and we had absolutely no clue who Dave and Kay were. Like, we had one phone conversation. I was like, yeah, they seem really cool. Like, they work for Missions Door. I have no clue who these people are, though. And we had no clue who the team was either. And we showed up, and we were like, by the end, we're so in. We're like, we go anywhere with these people. So anyway, so it was just being on college campuses, the demographic is 18 to 25, and so you just get a lot of that age group. And I think that one of the things that was the biggest blessing for me this trip was to learn from people who are different ages from me. Like Joan said, we had people on all spectrums of life. And so that was really cool, just to kind of be able to operate how I think the church was always made to be, and to kind of get out of that 18 to 25 demographic. So thank you for being all different ages, team. And and thank you also. Dave and Kay made us seem like a really cool team, but we were also so weird. And there was a lot of weird things that happened, so thank you for not abandoning us at the airport in Dallas when you realized what was happening. But so it was a really great trip, and Missions Door is an amazing organization. I love how they work with people who live there, and so there's no white savior complex, there's no toxic charity that happens, and so I'd really encourage you to look. They do short-term trips all the time, and Dave and Kay are short-term trip leaders, so I would do that. Thanks, guys.
Okay, and is Nancy still? Nancy, would you like to come share? She was the youngest person on the trip.
Yes.
And she could dig us all under the table. So. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. Well, I have been doing a lot of short-term missions, and they were all fabulous, and everyone was my favorite. But I became interested in missions when I was a young girl, growing up in a church that had missions people come. And at that time, they would go to the mission field for 5 years. And transportation was always interesting, how they got there. My friend's aunt was a nurse, and she had gone to various countries in Africa. And she would take a cattle boat that took weeks and weeks to get there. And she would stay. And that was so interesting to me. That's what I wanted to do when I grew up. But then again, I also wanted to get married and have children. And so that's what I did I raised my daughters, and then I started to work in childcare, and I was a director of a childcare center in Haverhill for 35 years. And I'm retired, and then I've been called back to that field, temporarily, I hope. So that's my story.
Thank you to everyone who shared. I was just wondering if I could get Alyssa. Could I have you just come up one more time and just pray? Sure. Pray for the Lenca people, pray for Pastor Jorge and for Pastor Eric and the churches, and for the continuing mission that's there.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, let's pray. Father God, Lord, we're just so grateful that you gave us this opportunity to go and to serve the Lenca. God, I just, they have a special place in our hearts now, and we just lift them up to you. Lord, would you continue to grow their mission? Would you continue to just move in their people? God, would you plant churches and empower missionaries and grow their people to just know you better every moment of every day. God, we pray specifically for Pastor Eric and Yoami. for Pastor Jorge and Novia, for Pastor Isais and his wife and their families, God, that as they lead this expedition down there, Lord, that you would just go before them, that you prepare the way. And God, for us, would you just continue to remind us of them and their stories and their hearts, God, that they might be 2 hours behind and a lot of miles away, Lord, but they're our brothers and sisters. God, we are one family in you. So, Lord, would you just continue to unite our hearts, God, that we would be more in line with you and your spirit. And, Lord, if it's in your will, that you would send us out again with more people and just more willing hearts. We're ready to serve you, God. And we pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. One more round of applause for the team and for what their work this morning. The Lord is amazing.